Hey guys, welcome back to Love, Sex and Magic. Today's guest is Kim Anami. Kim is a sex and intimacy coach, host of the Orgasmic Enlightenment Podcast, famously went viral for her vaginal kung fu and weightlifting. In this episode, we talk about everything that is possible with orgasms. So this is really going to help expand your orgasm repertoire. We talk about all the orgasms that are possible for both men and for women, how you can go for 8 hours. We talk all about squirting, we talk about anal. We really go there in this episode. So reminder, use your headphones if you do have any little ones around. This is a really sexy episode. Let's do it. Kim, it's so good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Nothing more than I like to speak about than orgasms.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. I've got to say, out of all of the guests that I've researched, I loved researching you the most because I just love your voice in this industry. I just love how you are there are no holds barred. You are just say it as it is. So yeah, I should probably say at the beginning of this episode, we're probably going to have a lot of explicit adult content in this episode to be expected. But yeah, love all of your work, love your voice in this world. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is how you went viral with vaginal weightlifting, because I actually have a distant memory of seeing this when it actually happened. And now obviously I'm following you, engaging with your content, and I realize that it's you. How did this become a part of your life?
Well, I've been studying Taoist and Tantric sexual philosophies for the last 20, almost 30 years now. And so I learned about the jade egg that long ago, and I began practicing with it. And then over the years, as I was working with women in my own practice of sex and intimacy coaching, they would come to me and they would be like, I'm just one of those women and Kegels don't really seem to work for me. And then I'd hear this over and over again. And I realized that Kegels weren't working for anyone. And so I'd been practicing with the jade egg and I found that incredibly successful. I would have partners notice the difference in my vagina within a day. One day of working with the egg and they were like, what's up with your vagina? And I'm like, everything's up with my vagina. And so I was like, And then I researched it, and Dr. Kegel in 1947, the inventor of the Kegel exercise that most people think today is simply just, contracting the vaginal muscles. That's not what he invented. The actual exercise involves putting a device inside of the vagina for feedback and resistance. So rather than just flapping your vagina at random in the wind, it's just like going to the gym. You actually need to press weights to create that feedback and resistance to build strength. So when he incorporated this device, which was called the Kegel perineometer, into his practice, he had a 90% success rate with eliminating urinary incontinence immediately. And then as the practice began to be adapted by other people over time, the success rate dropped. And the reason why is because they didn't include using this device. They just told women to squeeze their vaginal muscles. And so and I think honestly, the reason for that is that they were just, these OBGYNs were terrified to tell women to go home and put something in their vaginas.
Yeah.
And so they adapted the exercise, maladapted it and then they had, the stats we see today, which is that up to 60% of women have urinary incontinence issues. 50% of women after childbirth have pelvic organ prolapse, which part of their anatomy is literally falling out of their body. And these stats are from the Yale University School of Medicine. So I was like, all right, so that's not working. The egg works miraculously. And then I started working with that and teaching women the egg in my workshops and classes, and women would have incredible results. Like say a woman who'd had urinary incontinence for 20 years, had to wear a pad to go for a run, was terrified to go on a trampoline with her kids. In 1 week, gone, completely gone.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay, this is amazing. And so then as my business expanded online, I began to teach this online. And I did a video in 2014 called 10 Reasons to Lift Weights with Your Vagina. And that went viral. And I was amazed, like, wow, this is speaking to a need that's not being addressed in women. It hit all these mainstream media outlets. And I was like, this is incredible. And, vaginas are hungry for this information. And And then in 2015, I was like, well, what can I do this year to kind of spread awareness about this? And I came up with this idea, kind of like that traveling gnome meme, where, someone steals
Yeah.
a gnome from someone's yard and then takes it all over the world and takes photos of it in front of the Eiffel Tower or the, Big Ben or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to do that with my vagina. Hashtag things I lift with my vagina. And I'm going to travel around the world and lift objects indigenous to various regions with my vagina, with that hashtag. And then that went mega viral, where there's photos of me lifting green coconuts in Bali, lifting a Murano glass chandelier in Venice, Italy. And then one of my favorites is lifting a piece of the Berlin Wall at the Berlin Wall in Germany, because that's the Great Wall of Vagina. And my vagina won an Oscar on the Hollywood Boulevard. I got Best Supporting Vagina Award. So I had a lot
Wow.
of fun with that. And then the same thing, like that went viral. And that was even bigger. That was seen by like hundreds of millions of people all over the world. And again, vaginas are hungry for this information, because these are very neglected things in women's health. And the powers that be, the allopathic approach isn't helping people. They're using messy and often very damaging band-aids. And this is, in a short period of time, can completely overhaul a woman's vagina and her sex life. And so the way that I teach it, though, isn't just a series of exercises. Yes, that's part of it. And I say exercises because I don't believe, since this has all become very now mainstream, courtesy of my vagina, people are selling eggs all over the place, and they're giving misinformation, like telling women to just wear an egg around all day, which is a waste of time completely. And so I teach it as a mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical approach, right? Which is what I call vaginal kung fu, which is taking all of those dimensions into effect. Because let's say a woman's got a history of sexual abuse, or a bunch of bad relationships, or just internalizing beliefs in the culture at large. All of those things are written on the body. And so even it's like going on a diet and that's all you do, versus looking at how you think about food. Do you emotionally eat? What's your lifestyle? Do you exercise? What kinds of foods are you eating? Like, there's that holistic approach for sustained and permanent change, versus just going on a crash diet for a few weeks to try to lose weight, right? So my approach is always about taking in all of these parts of the self so that we can have permanent, lasting change.
Wow, I love that so much. What a journey. And yeah, I can remember those things going viral and being like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy." And then you get into this space and you're like, "Yeah, that makes complete sense." But I think to a lot of people in the beginning, it is that kind of shock factor, like you're doing what with your vagina? So for anyone
Yeah,
that's listening, that's just like, I have no idea what is going on. What is this? What are they talking about? What is this magic egg that I'm hearing them talk about? Can you break it down super simple? What is this egg and what does it do for your vagina?
right. So, just like any other muscle in the body, the vaginal pelvic floor muscles need exercise in men and women. And, the idea that women have all these symptoms that are considered to be normal. So, in my work, I talk a lot about normal versus normalized, right? So, women think that peeing their pants is normal. It's not normal at all. It's been normalized because there's so much misunderstanding about women's health and unwillingness to talk about it, and all this shame that's, laid on top of it, where I actually assert that shooting ping pong balls with your vagina is normal. That is what a normal, healthy vagina ought to be able to do, not just some like show that people think they see in Thailand. So the jade egg is an egg it's a piece of jade carved in the shape of an egg that goes a stone that goes inside the vagina. It's got a hole drilled through it, and then you can attach a string to it. So then you can attach any number of weighted objects to it. And then you're creating that feedback and resistance that you need to actually build strength. And so just think about exercise, right? If you were to just do this with your bicep, like do a bicep curl in the air, versus picking up a weight and then pressing with the weight, of course, you're going to build muscle and strength by using the weight. And you're going to do very little. Maybe you'll bring a little bit of awareness to the area by using nothing but air, but it's really not going to build any kind of strength. And so as I said, the stats on women suffering from issues due to a lack of pelvic floor strength are incredible. And there's so many
Mm.
things that are attributed to this, like even lack of lubrication in women, right? Lubrication comes from circulation. If you have adequate blood flow and oxygenation in the tissues, you're going to have profuse lubrication. I've had menopausal women gushing all over the place, sending me text messages like they can't even sit down anymore without leaving a puddle because their vaginas are now on overdrive because they're so
Right.
powerful. Their libido's gone up, their orgasmic potential has gone up. They have much more sensation in the vagina. I often say that most vaginas are numb because they're just under exercised and under, loved as well.
Mm.
But without that actual exercise paid to them, they just wither away and atrophy like any other muscle that we don't exercise. And so, this idea of prolapse and incontinence and the allopathic approach is ridiculous. It's like trying to put plastic mesh into the vagina, that there's like millions of lawsuits now against pharmaceutical companies for doing these things because they don't work and they backfire and create massive problems inside of women. So, these are things that can all be addressed holistically, naturally, and with the jade egg on its own, right? Is this powerhouse for women to reconnect. So, not just building this physical strength and awareness and articulation, but to reconnect to those energies. So, when women have dissociated from their sexual energy and their vaginas, it feels numb. Right. And
Mm.
so the egg practice is all about bringing that sensation, that feeling, that awareness back into the area and reclaiming this part of ourselves.
Hey guys, just want to briefly interrupt this episode to tell you about Yoni Pleasure Palace. So Yoni Pleasure Palace is where I go to for all of my sensual and self-pleasure practice needs, from Yoni eggs to crystal wands. So today I want to tell you about this brand new addition, this gorgeous golden G-spot toy. It's going to help you have deeper orgasms in your self-pleasure practice. I highly, highly recommend. Head over to yonipleasurepalace.com. Use the code Melissa to get 25% off your entire order. That is the best discount you're going to find online. You're going to have such an incredible time with these toys. It's going to add so much more to your self-pleasure practice. All right, let's get back to the conversation. It makes so much sense why we would do that, and it's crazy now when you put it like that, how we go to the gym and we work our muscles, but yet we don't do anything to work our vagina muscles. We just kind of think we don't need to do anything. And I love when you share, because there's so much kind of this conditioning that we receive that's like, you need a tight vagina, you need a small and tight vagina. And I love when you share, you're like, no, you want a strong vagina. It's not about it being tight, it's about it being strong. And this is how we create a stronger vagina. And that's not for our partner's sake. That's for our sake, so we can have like better orgasms. Well, obviously, and our partner obviously benefits from that as well. But it's something that
Yes.
that we're doing for ourselves, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it's true, there's a misnomer, and I clarify that in my work, is that we don't want a tight vagina, because women can have what I call a vagina on lockdown, and that's a condition where the vagina feels really tight and unable to open, which is incidentally often from unresolved trauma. Often women with that condition have had sexual abuse or violations, and of course their vagina is going to shut down until it receives healing, like smart vagina, right? But rather than listening to the vagina, the allopathic approach is to try to force it open, or it's all in your head, or we have no idea what this condition is about, because they don't look at the deeper possible causes. And so, yes, a side benefit is that you can give your partner an orgasm, a hand job with your vagina, or if your partner's been naughty, you can punish them as well. There's a
Tell us more. Tell us more about that.
A friend of mine knew a woman in Thailand who put 3 women in the hospital because she didn't know her own strength, or maybe she did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, that's what, again, this is the normal healthy baseline for vaginas, using them as a secret weapon in
Mm.
all possible ways to create your life and energize and rejuvenate yourself. And of course, as a, self-protection. I'm kidding about the last part, obviously, but it's a true story about the woman in Thailand. It's not,
Yeah.
that's the truth. The vagina can be that strong.
So let's all collectively listening to this expand our orgasm repertoire with you, Kim. Like, tell us all the different types of orgasms that we can experience, because I know most people are imagining that there's only 2 or 3 types. Can you tell us everything? Give us like a rundown so that we can expand our knowledge on this.
Sure. So I'm a really big proponent, first of all, of every woman can. It's the Anami guarantee. And if we're talking about female orgasms right now,
Yeah, let's start with females.
do you want to go on it? Yeah. And so there's this myth or this misinformation that gets perpetuated in Western culture around, oh, just some women can, and then it's sort of in the guise of, oh, don't worry if you're one of those women, don't feel bad if you can't have them, which is, this misguided sort of virtue signaling, I guess, of like, oh, no, it's okay. But that's actually really patronizing, because all women can. I guarantee it. They just haven't uncovered the right tools. And when there's all this misinformation in the society at large, of course, women get confused. And so I've had women who bought into this idea that is, let's say, one time they tried to play with their G-spot and nothing really happened. And then they hear that, oh, just some women can do this and other women can't. And so they just put it aside and go, oh, I guess I'm just one of those women who can't, so I'll just stick to the clitoris. And they're completely robbing themselves of what I call the deeper life-changing orgasms. The clitoris is literally just the tip of the iceberg. 10%, 90% of all of the pleasure, all of the life-changing and rebirthing and self-actualizing transcendent power of orgasms for women are all in the vagina. The good stuff is in the vagina. So, we can simplify it to clitoral orgasms, G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms. There's also breast and nipple orgasms. There's anal orgasms. There's energy orgasms. But let's stick to the vagina for now. And so the deeper you go, the deeper you go. G-spot orgasms or any of the internal orgasms are characterized by a woman needing to be able to open up and trust and surrender. So the more that she's feeling that she can get there, so that means you have to feel comfortable with yourself and your body. You have to feel comfortable with your partner. These types of orgasms don't typically happen in more casual sex situations. They won't even happen if you've had an argument with your partner that you haven't resolved when you get into bed.
Yeah.
They're excellent barometers of your ability to open and where you are in your relationship. And so this is my big message, is that the real deep inner work for women is coming to a place of openness and trust and surrender. And then once they get there, if you build it, they will come. And so these orgasms are likened, especially the cervical orgasm, which is corresponding to the heart point in Taoist sexual reflexology. They mapped out reflexology points all through the vagina. And so for that kind of orgasm, then it's also connected to the vagus nerve, which is considered to be the most spiritual nerve in the body, and connected to the heart. And so a woman has to be truly open-hearted and vulnerable and raw to get to these places. But when she does, she gets this incredible transcendent rebirthing type experience that goes all the way up to the crown chakra and opens her up to enlightenment, opens her up to divine energy and flow. And so these are what I call essential medicine for women, because when you're having these, this is like having one of the most powerful personal growth tools that you have access to literally at your fingertips, right? You have access to this all of the time. And so when women get to be able to have these orgasms on a regular basis, this is everything from building immunity, building self-confidence, building creative power in the world. Sexual energy is life force energy. If we're not creating babies with it, we can create new projects, new endeavors, channel that energy out into the world. And these vaginal orgasms are the keys to the queendom. These are what really build up all areas of a woman and give her this kind of spiritual and life power that she just doesn't have access to otherwise. And this is not to shame women, for not having them. It's like, no, I'm telling you, honey, you can get there. You just need to know how. And that's a message to any woman who's like, but I thought there weren't any. I thought just some women could have those. No, that's only what you hear from ignorant and sexually inexperienced and underfucked people, be they OBGYNs or so-called sex experts or whatever. All they're telling you when they say that is that they have a terrible sex life and they've never gotten there themselves, which is, that's your barometer. If a person tells you that, is that really who you want to learn from? Someone who can't have their own orgasms and is supposedly teaching people about them? Like, no, I think you can do better.
I agree. I love that. So, when you talk about this transcendent spiritual rebirthing experience, just to clarify, you're talking about cervical orgasms, right?
Mostly cervical orgasms, but I would say a woman can get there with anal orgasms, with energy orgasms, which is look ma no hands, like having an orgasm without touch, which means that eventually, as you've activated all of these energy centers in the body, you can get there just by thinking about them. So that's more advanced level stuff. But I would say the most profound orgasms for women are cervical, anal, and then G spot is sort of middle ground between the potency of the cervical orgasm and the fun, appetizer, let's get things juiced up of the clitoral orgasm, right? Like to me,
Mm,
that's how I see it. It's an appetizer. It's just not the main course. It's a great way to warm things up and get a woman's juices flowing. But then we go into the vagina for the real important work. And the G spot is also can be, great emotional release. Women often have tears. They feel great emotional letting go when they have these orgasms. So when she's crying or even sometimes anger, and some women even laugh hysterically, it's like there's all of this emotional stuff that's stored in the vaginal tissues
mm.
gets released through stimulation and having these orgasms. So that's why I say they're great therapy, they're great medicine. This is how we can then integrate our true power as women as and owning our sexual energy and sexuality.
Completely. And I've got to say, like, I've had a few of these in my life where I've had these cervical orgasms where I've literally been crying and I don't know why. And it's not because I feel sad or because I feel like traumatized or anything by it. It's just this incredible, it just feels like you're at one with the entire universe in that moment. And I kind of want to say to people, it's probably easy to listen to someone like Kim and be like, oh my God, she must have these every single day. And I don't know, maybe you do, Kim. But I think it's something that we can, I think we tend to get into a rhythm with orgasms, don't we? We kind of get used to where we know we can get it. And for me, like I got really used to my G spot, like from a young age. And I found the clitoris later, like the opposite way from I think where what most people do.
Mm,
And so I got into a
yeah.
really kind of place with my G spot where I was like, well, this is reliable. I know that this works. And this, I know that I can come like this. I know that I can ejaculate like this. And then it was for me like the clitoris came later. But every now and again, I would have this crazy cervical orgasm, which I didn't know what the fuck was going on. But now I get, oh, that's what we're aiming for. Like that is a spiritual experience. So what I'm interested in now is like, how can I have more of those experiences? How can I train my vagina to have more of these experiences? Is that with the jade egg, or is that another something else to use?
I'd say it's a combination of things. The jade egg is an excellent way to get there because, on many levels, we're healing, releasing things, we're getting to know our own vaginas, we're waking them up both physically and energetically. Yoni massage is another great tool. I've got some great videos on yoni massage on my YouTube channel to really go in there and release tension, right? So, to open, awaken, activate all the different richness in the vaginal territory. And a huge piece of this is really, as I said, this level of openness and trust. And
Mm.
so when a woman is fully owning her sexuality, when she feels at ease in her body, so if a woman has issues with her body, she's not feeling comfortable, she feels not at ease in her own skin, if she has unresolved trauma from the past around sexuality, around relationships that she hasn't really cleared in a potent way. And like I said earlier as well, it's a barometer for the connection in the current relationship. And so I often say, like, if you've had an argument at breakfast with your partner and you haven't resolved it, and then you go to have sex at night, somebody probably doesn't get wet, someone probably doesn't get as hard as they normally do, or they might ejaculate too quickly, or the woman doesn't come to orgasm. And people think that these things are unrelated, but they're not. Everything shows up in bed. So
Mm.
your body, your sexual organs are the great barometer for whatever's going on. And so the tools that I teach couples in terms of keeping their relationship in this very connected, open place is then what's going to translate into cervical orgasms too.
I love that. So say there's like women listening that are in a relationship with someone, and they've got to that place where their sex is starting to feel a little bit like going through the motions. They're not exploring each other in this way, but she's listening to things like this, and she's awakening to, oh, I really want to go deeper and have more conscious gourmet sex rather than junk food sex, as I hear you share so often. How can she start to kind of bring this conversation up with her partner if they're so used to junk food sex?
I think that like people often are concerned that by initiating these conversations, their partner is going to feel criticized or like they're not doing something well enough. And so one of the great ways to frame it is, oh my gosh, like look at all the amazing things are possible. I just learned about cervical orgasms. I learned that any guy can have sex for 8 hours at a time. Any man can learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation. I can apparently have 30 G-spot orgasms in a row. Wow, wouldn't you love to explore that? Like, rather than a criticism of what's not working. And, I do a whole lot of education about what's really possible, right? Because a lot of people don't know, most people don't know what they don't know. And most people, what they've been taught is sex will kill you, sex will get you pregnant. Off you go, try to figure it out and don't die and get AIDS in the process, right? Like, so most people are operating with a deficiency of information or misinformation. And so I think like I put huge amounts of free content out there on my podcast, my Orgasmic Enlightenment podcast, on my YouTube channel for people to realize like what is actually out there. And so I would bring them to my YouTube channel or my podcast and just start listening to these different topics of, hey, these are some amazing things that I didn't even know were possible. So there's no criticism of the current situation, right? It's
Mm.
unless eventually you have to have those conversations when nothing happens and grows. But for the way to introduce it is like, here's what's available. Wow, I didn't even know that. How exciting is that, right? So you're going on this exciting journey together of how you can grow and develop and evolve in the relationship.
Yeah, I love that. So true. The way you frame it can be empowering or disempowering for your partner in your relationship. So let's move on and talk a
Yeah.
little bit about male orgasms. So I want to hear more about this going for 8 hours. And I would love to hear if you could share with us about how we've been experimenting with this with a little success, which I'm super happy about, and so is Rick. But about separating the orgasm from the ejaculation for the guy, which I think most guys don't even realize is possible. Can you share a little bit about how that works and the different kind of orgasms that men can experience?
So most men are accustomed to having a very kind of like explosive, short, you know, get to the peak and then have your pelvic contractions and then boom, it's over and then they pass out. And so one of the core things that I teach men is how to use their breath to build stamina because no woman's going to get to these deeper vaginal orgasms that often take extended sex sessions of 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour once they're at least, especially when they're learning this. Plus, I think extended sex is where the real gold is, right? Like that's how we really harvest the most sexual energy from our encounters. And so breath is huge. Like one of the major tasks, let's say a major female task is to build this strength and activation and consciousness in the vagina. One of the major male tasks is to build stamina because if she's going to be going to all of these wild and cataclysmic places, he needs to be able to go there and hold the space with her, right? And so one of the fastest ways that a man communicates to a woman that he's not there is by ejaculating too quickly. And so this is a massively important thing for men to have. So breath is huge. I have a great video, How to Last Longer in Bed, on my YouTube channel that walks men through the breathing techniques to really up their stamina and be able to go for hours. And I've had men work on these things for a week or even a few days and go from like a 5 or 10 minute sexual spurt to an hour with their partner, right? All it takes is some discipline and commitment to get there. And so after practicing this, then a man can eventually get so much conscious awareness about how he's ejaculating or, how what his orgasmic edge is, that he can eventually consciously decide to hold back the orgasm, hold back the ejaculation, and still have the orgasm. And then the other bonus is he can keep going. He can keep making love to his partner because he's still maintaining an erection. There might be a slight dip in the erection that's very temporary, but nothing that would actually interrupt them having sex.
Or you can finish, come back to it later, and then have an orgasm?
Sure. I mean, it's up to the couple and the man, but I think what's really crucial is that a man has conscious control, right? Because in the dynamic of like masculine and feminine energy or within a couple, we want to be building that sense, like I said, as the woman is getting to these deeper places. And the tears that you talk about are, so vital, like incredible clearing and therapy, catharsis for women. But as you're say, getting to that place and you're starting to open up and crack open in yourself, and then if the guy just he comes and it's game over, a woman's going to pull back and be like, oh well, I guess it's not really safe for me to go to these places, even if that's an unconscious thought, right? So
Mm.
that man having utter and 1,000% control over how or when or if he's ejaculating is essential. So this is our work as men and women in relationships, and that male work, and number one is about building stamina and conscious control.
Yeah, I love that. So important. And these conversations are just not being had enough, I think. I mean, obviously you're having them, but I mean, I think most couples and people are not having these kind of conversations, but I think it's so important. Sex can be, I think, for a lot of relationships, something that's kind of shelved or they've gone, oh, well, that's not that important, or, we'll focus on other things. But so much room there for growth for both individuals and in the relationship. So it's really important, I think, to have these conversations with your partner, and position them in that way that's really empowering for both people. Um, Great. Let's move on. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. I want to talk about ejaculation, female ejaculation. And I also want to talk about anal, because I think not enough people are going into anal orgasms as well. So, can we start off with female ejaculation? Can you dispel some of the myths around that, around squirting, around what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to feel like, smell like, all of that jazz?
Well, with female, I mean, I think that there is a release of fluid from each different type of orgasm, but the most profuse release happens with female squirting, which is activated through stimulating the G spot area. And so women can have a G spot orgasm that's separate from a squirting or ejaculation. And this is the kind of stuff we see where women can squirt across the room or hit the ceiling. I know a woman who could squirt like 10 feet across the room. And a lot of that comes out of having strong vaginal muscles, because if your muscles are strong enough, they can push the ejaculate out. Some women actually experience what in men is called retrograde ejaculation, where they have an ejaculation, but their vaginal muscles are so weak that it just gets reabsorbed into the vagina. And so vaginal squirting ejaculation is an absolute fact. It's not a myth. It's not urine. They've tested the composition of it, and it has something in it called PSA, or prostate specific antigen, which you also find in the male prostate, which is the male G spot, the equivalent. They have, like, men and women have the same, but the male's found inside the anus. And so the ejaculation experience has been written about in different cultures all over the world, from African cultures where women would take their 12-year-old nieces and take them into a room to practice what they called spraying the wall. And in Indian cultures and Taoist cultures, like, these are the waters of women. In Tantra, these are considered the sacred waters, like a gift that women give to their partners. There's Japanese artwork showing women having cunnilingus performed on them, and a man is collecting it in a vessel. And so there's all kinds of information throughout the ages. And then Western science comes along, and they have their own very narrow attempts at trying to prove these things, and then they are the source of this misinformation, right? Because if it doesn't show up in a lab in a certain way, then they just deem it to not exist. And it's ironically, I think it's always male researchers who are out there trying to prove how women don't have orgasms. And I'm just saying, your wife is the most underfucked woman in the world. We know this,
Yeah.
right? For a fact, because no man is going to be out there trying to fight for the cause of not having orgasms, right? So the squirting experience is also, again, inside the vagina, very cathartic. These waters are being released. They have to be a woman, again, fully has to be in this place of being able to let go. And if these experiences were so easy to have, right, if they were just a matter of finger movement, every woman would be having them, but they're not. And that doesn't mean that they can't, or that they physically, there's, just some women can or can't. That's not the answer. The answer is the same as I gave earlier, is that the woman has to be in a certain place of openness and surrender and trust and letting go. And if she's not able to get there, her vagina will not have that experience either. So that's why these waters are so sacred, because they come from this place of when the woman is truly in that space of openness and just cracked wide open, then she releases those waters. And that's why they're such a gift.
Yeah, it's so true. And you're so right. It's not about a technique or a mathematical thing. It's so much about the openness and the surrender and the trust. And I think that's so important for all of these different orgasms that we're talking about. Let's move on to anal orgasms for both men and women. So you're saying it's not just possible, it's possible for everyone to have these.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I always joke that it's like God's great sort of trick or joke that he played on men to put their G spot up their ass, because then they also have to challenge the taboo, or am I gay, the sort of, that men might have, right? Which is good. This is really good stuff to work through these fears or taboos or energies around these places. It's very, very powerful stuff when we crack it open. And then for women, the ass as well, like very sensitive, like very much, I said, like cervical orgasms, where I think the like anal sex is something to pull out like once in a while. I wouldn't recommend it as a constant thing. I think it's more like, okay, I used to frame it as when I need to bring out the big guns, like when I would feel like something in me was kind of stuck that I couldn't really identify and get to. It'd be like, that's time to get fucked up the ass. It's time to bring out the anal sex. And the magic of that, and I often liken like anal sex as a pathway to God, because the vagina, you can throw in some lubricant and fake it, right? Like a woman can then not even be ready physically, but if you slather it with lubricant, oh, magically she's ready. But the ass doesn't work like that. Even all the lube in the world is not going to have an ass open itself up unless an ass has been consciously let go and opened up. So it's a beautiful tool for that, because the act of fully having to consciously open and open and open and open to receive is that pathway to this transcendence. And so that's why they're such potent tools at anal sex and anal orgasms. And again, it's all about this level of letting go. I mean, that's been the theme I keep repeating through all of this, but it's true. That's really the keys to the queendom, is if you build it, they will come. If you focus on these qualities of being able to surrender and open and release your blockages, to remove barriers that we've put up over our lifetimes of defense mechanisms, of protection, of false personas. Once we peel all of those away, we can get to these places. And in the same way, once we get to more of these orgasms, it helps us to do those things. So in my early very powerful orgasmic experiences of cervical orgasms, would walk out into the world and feel like a new person. I would feel like all of the kind of conditioning and false defense mechanisms I had just literally fell away. And I was walking out as a more true version of who I really am. And those are the experiences that motivated my entire career trajectory, because I realized, without having anyone tell me it, because that's not the information in our culture, is that sex was this portal to other states of consciousness and awareness. And that that was the gold. Yes, it felt good, but I was like, whoa, it actually gets me high. It brings me to other states of awareness in myself. Like the French term, le petit mort, the little death and rebirth. That is the essence of the deeper, transcendent, orgasmic experiences. And I often use the barometer for people. Are you using sex to put you to sleep or to wake you up? Are people using sex, which they often do, like bust out a quick orgasm to help them have a sleep, or go to have a nap, versus are you using them to open up and awaken your state of consciousness and get to a higher place within yourself?
I love that so much. I would love to hear about the toys that you recommend and use. I know you've got some on your website, which I may have placed an order for recently. Um, but I know a lot of women kind of get stuck on a vibrator, and they'll just use and use and use this vibrator without kind of exploring other options. And I feel as though in Australia and the US, there's a like everyone's really on the crystal dildo hype, but it's not really caught on that much in the UK yet. We don't really have that many suppliers and things like that. Can you share with us what your favorite tools are for a woman that's maybe on her own or wants to self pleasure and explore more of that way?
Yeah, so the risk with vibrators is that they will desensitize the clitoris over time, and so then the clitoris just will not be responsive to a tongue or a finger, because who can compete with a machine that's vibrating like a million times faster? And so I usually try to steer people away from vibrators in general for the clitoris. And then in terms of the vagina, we're looking at, I have created a line of very specifically designed and shaped dildos that are made out of Venetian style blown glass, all hand blown, that I call the Holy Trinity. These are couture dildos that are absolutely exquisite. And the thing that I didn't at the time, I love the idea that we could get more shape, and like all the crystal dildos I ever saw were just these straight lines, and they looked very unfuckable to me. Like, I'm not putting a straight, hard object inside my vagina. It needs to have shape. And so those were not appealing to me. I love the idea of working with crystals for sure, but not, I didn't like the idea of a straight, hard thing going inside of me. So I created a line of glass dildos that are shaped for specific positions for each of the vaginal orgasms. So there's one called Akasha, which reaches the G spot, because any G spot toy has to have a curve in it. That's where the location of the G spot is internally. So a straight object is going to bypass the G spot. So we have to have a curve on that. And then two cervical dildos, one that's got more length and the second one that has more girth. And the idea is that ideally you use all three of them, and you start with, say, some warm up, again, the appetizer of the clitoris. Then once that you feel the vagina is wet and warmed up, you go inside with that G-spot toy. You stimulate the G-spot, maybe have a G-spot orgasm or 10. And then you go in there with cervical tool number 1, which is called anahata, which is the Sanskrit word for heart. And then you stimulate and get the cervix warmed up. And then when the vagina is really warmed up, then you go in with what we call the finisher, or siva, which is cervical tool number 2, which is quite a girthy specimen that at first I was looking at it and I thought, I don't know if this is going to be too big for people, right? And then these women would come to me, like, we gave out all these test kits when I first designed these, like for women to try all three of them, and they'd all come back and go, Siva, oh my God, like this larger one that I was
Oh my
concerned. But
God.
the idea too is to warm, if you started with Siva, some women might be able to take it right away, but some women might not. But if you were to warm up the vagina first with the other two, right, and really get it going, then Siva, the larger one, is no problem, because she's really able. And this is the thing, is like vaginas need and can take all of this. They need a lot of stimulation and penetration and attention to really activate their true power. And that's why I created this, the Holy Trinity, was to do that, that if you don't have a partner, this is now your new lover, is the Holy Trinity. You'll be like definitely set for life with these.
Well, I do have a partner and I still feel like I need to order the other two. So I ordered I've been speaking with your assistant to get it delivered here, but Anahata is the one that I've ordered. Now I feel like I should order the other two as
It's
well to go with
beautiful.
it. I've never seen any
Oh,
that are that. It's like, wow, I could put that up my vagina. I'd feel okay with that.
thank you. That's what I wanted them to be, like fuckable objet d'art. Like, and that's the other thing with crystals, is you're kind of limited with design, and I wanted to do that too. But a solution that I found to that, because I do like the idea of working with crystals, is that I created a line of crystal elixirs. So these are crystal essences transmuted into water, and you can take an essence and put 7 drops of it onto your dildo, and it will change into that crystal for 7 days. And so a lot of the crystal dildos that you see anyway, like say rose quartz, it's a beautiful crystal, but it's not specifically designed to address sexual issues, right? And so the crystals that I've worked with in my essences and my elixirs are. And so something like carnelian or crocite or garnet, these are all about libido boosting and sexual ignition. And so those, you can get the elixirs and then use them on the dildos, and then you can change the dildo to any crystal you like. So that was my solution of best of all possible worlds.
I love that.
But I'm glad that you love them and appreciate them, because that's how it ought to feel with anything you put inside of your body, is that it feels beautiful and you want it inside of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Kim, this has been so incredible. I love to wrap up with 3 questions that I ask everyone, um, based on love, sex, and magic. What are you loving right now in your life?
Connection to nature. I've deliberately put myself out of urban centers right now and am amongst forest and rainforest and ocean and beach. And every single day I have encounters like earthing and being barefoot, running through the jungle, walking on the beach, being in the water, hand feeding birds that come to our house. And so that's what I'm really loving right now, in the midst of all kinds of turmoil and chaos in the world, being able to ground into the earth.
That sounds perfect to me. Next, what turns you on?
Truth. Truth turns me on. Truth, being able to speak the truth, find a deeper level of truth, connect with people on the most, distilled level of truth, is an actual turn on for me.
Love that. And when was the last time you experienced magic?
Yesterday, I was about to shoot a video, and it's connected to the other two, but these 6 birds came onto the balcony to be fed, and usually they just come like in 1 or 2, and they're large birds, and like parrot sized birds. And so 6 of them came at once, and every single one of them was all just like lining up, and I got to commune with them before I went, and there's like this little energy boost before I went and shot my video.
Oh, I love that. That is magic. I love that so much. Great. Well, Kim, where can everyone come and find you and hang out and watch all your videos and come and connect with you?
Well, kimanami.com is my website. My podcast is Orgasmic Enlightenment, and my YouTube channel has lots of videos on it as well. My Instagram account is another great place. And then on my website, I have all of my online programs that you can look under Sexual Savant Salons, and each of them has a free video series. So I have a class for vaginas, for women, for men, for couples, and for pregnant women, and holistic childbirth. And then my shop is called Anami Alchemia, and that's where you can find the jade egg kit and information, as well as those beautiful couture dildos we've been talking about, and my crystal elixirs too.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, I'm going to link all of Kim's places to go in the show notes, as well as where you can get those beautiful couture dildos. So everything will be in the show notes. Kim, we're going to head over to the Goddess Collective now and just take some more personal questions. But from my heart to yours, thank you so much for this time today. Thank you so much for your energy and for all of your wisdom.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, hope you loved that episode with Kim. If you did, remember, leave us a review or leave us a comment, hit subscribe. And if you want to dive deeper, head on over to the Goddess Collective, where you can join us inside, where we have even more juicy questions answered by Kim and all of our other guests. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.